Well, good evening, and I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting for the town of Sagging Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the council chambers this evening. Our first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility to do so. None. The next item is additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda, and we have nothing under that. So we have three delegations this evening, and the first one I see isn't here yet, so I think what we'll do is we'll move down to the second one. And if the first one comes, we'll move back up and when they get here. But the second delegation then is Gabrielle DeFrancesco. She's with our Municipal Heritage Committee, and she's here for the 2017 Heritage Conservation Award. Welcome, Gabriella.
Good evening, Mayor Smith, members of council, staff members, members of the press, and guests. According to American architect Ed McMahon, a sense of place is what makes our physical space worth caring about. And the more distinctive and unique a town is, the more we care about it. Today, people are asking, can't our communities be more distinctive, more livable, more beautiful? And can't we have more connection with nature and the outdoors? The Sagging Shores Municipal Heritage Committee is dedicated to preserving the architectural, historical, cultural, artistic, and significant natural features of Sagging Shores. We believe in the importance of connecting, remembering, honoring, and learning from those who came before us and from whose legacy we still benefit. McMahon tells us that a sense of identity and well-being is tied in a very profound way to historic buildings, and that in ancient Rome there was a mandate to preserve the visible symbols of community in order to give citizens a sense of identity in a changing world. And I think of the Colosseum that they used to race chariots around, and now all the cars go racing around, and I wonder how a Roman citizen would feel about that. Those involved in historic preservation believe the question should not be, how can we grow without destroying the things that we love about our community? But rather, how can the things that we love about our community help us to grow? McMahon states that our old economy was about making things, was product-driven, cost-sensitive, and controlled by proximity to markets. Our new economy, however, is now mainly about designing things, is knowledge-driven, value-sensitive, and that as capital is fluid, community distinctiveness plays a major role in determining where people choose to invest, live, work, vacation, and retire. He also states that as tourism is now the biggest industry in the world, that the more a community does to enhance its distinctiveness, the more people want to go there. We often hear that it takes a community to raise a child. Well, it also takes a community to preserve the history of Sagging Shores. Because of individuals and groups who recognize the value and importance of our past, we today have a tangible sense of our uniqueness. This is why each year we request nominations from the public of individuals who are involved in conserving our heritage. The committee received these nominations in late spring and used the following criteria in making our recommendations for awarding the Municipal Heritage Award. Individuals who, 1, voluntarily promote the importance of preserving significant heritage structures. 2, show leadership in restoration and preservation of heritage buildings, sites, and so on. 3, have long-standing service in an organization dedicated to maintaining architectural, cultural, artistic, and natural heritage. And 4, share personal collections of local artifacts, heritage photographs, or memorabilia with the community in order to promote awareness and appreciation of our heritage. The 2017 recipient of the Heritage Award has had a very long and varied role in researching, identifying, promoting, and preserving significant heritage buildings and cultural assets in Southampton, in Sagging Shores, excuse me. Joyce Johnson spent her summers in Bruce County as a teenager and has had a connection to Port Elgin most of her life. After university, she spent 1 year working at the Kitchener Public Library before moving to Port Elgin permanently with her husband, Bev Johnston. Joyce then worked in a variety of roles with the Bruce County Public Library for over 22 years. In 1988, Joyce was becoming increasingly concerned about the number of heritage homes that were being taken down in Port Elgin, and joined with other concerned citizens in learning from area LACAC groups about historic preservation. In 1989, she was one of the founding members of the Port Elgin LACAC, along with David Ellis, Lillian Hurd, Sharon Marshman, Christine Coulter Whitaker, and Mary Jane and Al Williamson. When LACAC was replaced by the Municipal Heritage Committee because the ministry wanted to broaden the definition of heritage, she became a long-standing member as well as chair for a number of years, and Joyce still sits on that committee. One of the first projects Joyce worked on was the formal designation of the Port Elgin Carnegie Library. In addition, the new LACAC committee worked on heritage building inventory, having the Nodwell Park site designated as a historic site. They did public education, walking tours, and of course, they prepared their annual budget. She has spent many hours researching heritage properties for the walking tour brochures, property plaques, interpretive plaques, heritage register, and the formal designation of heritage properties. Joyce's projects and accomplishments are too numerous to list. On the personal side, her love of old cars and her participation in numerous car shows has given her pleasure, while awakening in others their connection to cars owned by grandparents, parents, and friends, along with important memories of family and life events. It is evident that historic preservation has a major impact on the social, psychological, and economic well-being of Sagging Shores. Because of her long and dedicated efforts in preserving our unique heritage, while educating community members of the importance of connecting to and honoring those who came before us, it is fitting to award Joyce Johnston with this year's Municipal Heritage Award. Joyce, would you please come forward and accept this award?
Mayor Smith, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, I totally feel out of place. I'm supposed to be presenting, not standing here. I thank you very much for this award. It's really an honor to be recognized this way. And I can tell you I have totally appreciated the years doing research, getting to know my own community much better. Anyone that thinks it's boring needs their head examined, excuse me. But I have so enjoyed it, doing research and working with so many different committee members. Any projects we have done have been joint efforts. It's not me, it's not any individual, it's a committee. And we work jointly together, and every time you do something and you see it accomplished, it's really good. I need to say thank you to the current committee for recommending my name to council. It's kind of special being recognized in 2017, our sesquicentennial year. That, to me, is very special, and I say thanks to the committee, and wow, what an honor. I think heritage became very important to me as a child. I was born in Troopsburg, New York, second oldest of 12 siblings, and I remember my parents telling me stories of what they had done as they were growing up, where my grandparents had lived, where my aunts and uncles had lived, what they had done. And as brothers and sisters, we would play out in the yard and reenact those stories. And so they are embedded in me. They're very much a part of who I am. And I can truly say thanks to my mom and dad for that. I attended Troopsburg Central School, a small central school. Basically the same students all the way from grade 1 to 12. We became a close-knit group and still get together for reunions whenever we can. After graduating from high school, I spent that summer in Hepworth, and it was that summer that I became familiar with the Bruce Peninsula and central part of Bruce County. And also it was that summer that I met Bev, and consequently, many, many letters were written, lots of long-distance phone calls, and multiple trips across the border. I continued my education at State University of New York at Geneseo campus. I majored in library science, but each summer after I'd completed my studies, I returned to Hepworth or to Port Elgin. Something kept bringing me back. After my junior year, I received a green card and permission to work in Canada, and I was employed by the Bruce County Library Cooperative Board. That summer, I did book exchanges and exchanges with the schools, and that was the summer I truly got to know Bruce County, because as we went around and picked up the boxes of books, I went on a lot of rural roads that I wouldn't have known existed. So I developed a great appreciation for the beauty of our county. I went back and completed my degree and again came back to work for a 6-week term with the library board. And that year I did much the same, except I was invited to the board meetings and I attended several committee meetings. It was that year that Bruce County was looking at changing library service, different governance, different funding, and their plan was to have all 31 municipalities participate in the funding. And the committees that were meeting were basically planning for the centennial projects, the centennial of Bruce County and of Canada. So I had a wonderful time during that 6 weeks. Then in September, I worked at Kitchener Public Library. Again, I worked in the children's department, working for schools. But in July of centennial year, I applied for the position of county librarian. And I can say, Mr. Mayor, I have your grandfather to thank for that. He would say to me when we'd be home on the weekends, he said, "When are you coming back, Joyce? When are you coming back home? Coming back to work in Bruce County?" And that kind of put a seed in my mind, and I did apply. And I was hired in August as county librarian, and I worked for 20-odd years. I saw lots of changes in the library, and it was really a growing and learning experience. If I may, I'd just like to give you a bit of history of library service back before my time. The reason I'm giving it to you, I'll explain later. This is part of a report that the library board presented to the school board in 1970 when we indicated to the school board that we would like to phase out direct service to the schools. And as we told them that, we explained that we thought it would be a good idea for them to develop their own central libraries, and I'm so glad that that did happen. I've chosen the year of 1959. That was before I worked here, but I'm familiar with it because it was the same type of service that was followed right through 1966. In 1959, the Bruce County Library Cooperative provided library service to 21 libraries in Bruce County. They did 3 exchanges a year, 140 books per exchange, and the cost to each individual library or committee that was trying to keep the library service going was $25 for that service. So there was a total of 8,800 books circulated or exchanged for a lump sum of $525. That same year, we provided library service to 127 schools. There were a total of 144 classrooms, and each classroom would receive an exchange of books in a butter box packed with 30 books. I can remember stuffing those books in that box to get 30. Anyway, they would receive 5 exchanges that year. Each school board or central school would pay $10 per classroom. So there were 21,000 books circulated for a total sum of $1,440. Now you say to me, what does that have to do with heritage? And I will say, nothing and everything. Nothing because it's statistics, books moved, money exchanged. But if you look at the other side, it's heritage. It's the way people lived in 1959. There were one-room schoolhouses scattered all across the county of Bruce. Students walked to and from schools. And these schoolhouses were a center of the community. They housed space for they could have concerts. The yards were used for baseball games. It was a center of a community. And it's these one-room schools that have become part of our roots. It's where we've grown from. It's how we've gotten to where we are now. And here in Sagging Shores, heritage matters. Thanks to Diane, I think our committee has adopted that as our unofficial slogan. She keeps reminding us, heritage matters. Heritage matters here in Sagging Shores. And as members of the Municipal Heritage Committee, we continue to identify buildings that need to be put on the register, to identify places that used to be here, no longer are, that were part of our past, part of where we came from. Places like Denny's Dam, who at one time provided electricity for Southampton and for Port Elgin and for Walkerton, so businesses could work longer hours. Lumber mills could saw lumber later into the evening. Everything that has happened is part of who we are now. And heritage to me is living. It's what we're doing now that will be heritage for generations to come. And so I say thank you to Council for giving me this award. Thank you for your support and your encouragement over the years. Thanks to the staff. You've given us great guidance. You've helped us along when we struggled and tried to do something that just can't be done. And a big, big thank you to Tracy. Tracy Edwards is our support staff. And we've asked her to do lots of things. She just smiles and says, I'll try. And she does it. And the other big thank you is to the press. You have been our cheerleaders. You've taken the stories we brought forward and put them in the papers, over the radio, on online newspapers, on TV. And we do appreciate your doing that, because we can do a lot of work, but if it doesn't get out to the people, it's not really worth a lot. Thank you very much, and Heritage Matters in Sagging Shores.
Well, thank you, Joyce. I just actually I just want to say a few things. Your work at the library has really led to something great. This week we were at a library board meeting. We now have 27,000 members and loan out over 500,000 items each year. So from those small numbers that you talked about in the 50s, we've grown into and received accreditation from the Federation of Ontario Public Libraries, where there's only 30 other libraries in Ontario that have received that accreditation. All 17 branches in Bruce County have received that accreditation. So you should be proud of the work you did there. But I think more to the point is that the work that you've done in Heritage here, you will leave a lasting legacy of some of the things that you've left for our community, so that we remember these buildings and these issues that we've dealt with. And on behalf of the community, I just want to thank you. So we'll go back up with our next delegation is Mr. Dan Russell and the students of GC Houston School Council, and they're here about naming a bridge. So welcome, Mr. Russell and the students. We're looking forward to this.
Okay, sorry about that. We are thankful for the opportunity to come and speak to you this evening, and it's great to see some friendly faces around the council chamber tables. Mike Myatt, I haven't seen him for a number of years. We go back a long time. Mike hired me when I was 16 years old to the Parks and Rec department in Owen Sound to work on playgrounds, and actually that's where I got my first taste of working with students, working with children, and I developed a love for teaching. So it's great to see Mike, and still, he looks just like he did back then. He looks so young. Yeah, at least he's got his hair though, right? So thank you so much for having us here this evening. We feel very honored to have this opportunity again. We did come to present last year at around the same time. We thought it would be good to give you an update. We presented to the Heritage Committee over March break. We wanted to get to Council to have the opportunity to let you know where we are with this very special project, our Bemadzewin project, and to answer questions that you might have. With me this evening, I've got 4 members of our Student Council. I have Maddie Sheehan, Jack Bennett, Avery Sheehan, and Bella Compton. Bella's in grade 4, Avery's in grade 4, Maddie's in grade 7, and Jack's in grade 8. So they're going to be joining me for the presentation this evening. I'm going to get things started, though. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the goals that we originally had with our Bemadzewin project. And originally, the goals were twofold. We wanted to begin by embedding learning into all aspects of life at GC Houston. In the past, we had made attempts to embed culture and language in more of a superficial way. And we'd done this with things like powwows and special events, and we found that those were good, but we knew that we had to go deeper. If we really wanted culture to be part of the fabric of life at GC Houston, we had to take that learning deeper. What we were trying to do is allow culture and language and the backgrounds of our students to become part of the fabric of our school culture. The second goal is connected to the first goal, and it had to do with making learning for our students much more relevant and meaningful. And we know that going below the surface makes that happen, and it leads to greater student engagement. We use the grandfather teachings, the 7 sacred teachings, as kind of a springboard to accomplish those 2 goals. And so we started by using those grandfather teachings as our character education program, but we challenged our staff to weave the learnings from the grandfather teachings into all aspects of school life. The first year, last year, was about learning about the teachings. This year, it's taking it even a step further, and the challenge is to put those grandfather teachings into action in our lives every day at school. It's interesting, when you start a program or a project, sometimes you come across some outcomes that you didn't expect. And this is what's happened for us. There has been a third outcome or goal, and that is that of unity, to bring our community together as one family. And we're very excited about that outcome or that goal. In fact, I would argue that that's probably the most significant part of this program. The coming together of two cultures as one family or one community. At a time in Canada when truth and reconciliation is at the forefront, and we've got communities that are examples of divided communities. And you don't have to go very far to find communities that are really struggling with this. I think of Thunder Bay or even communities out west where First Nation and non-First Nation relations are not good. And truth and reconciliation has not brought about healing. I believe that Sagging Shores and Sagging First Nation is an example of the opposite. We're an example of a community that is healing. And we believe that GC Houston can be right at the center of that process, right at the center of that coming together as one family.
Bidmadzuin is an Ojibwe word that describes the right way to live your life. Translated into English, Mino Bidmadzuin means the good life. Bidmadzuin has the organizing theme for our life at GC. Together, staff and students are learning about the importance of living a good life, staying on a good path in life, and how you do this.
First Nation tradition shows us that learning about the practicing the grandfather teachings keeps us on the good path. Consequently, we have made this the sole focus of our character education program. Last year, we studied each grandfather teaching and tried to figure out how practicing these teachings keeps us going in the right direction. This year, our focus is on putting them into action in our lives. Our first teaching every year is Minadenmoan, or respect. We feel that this is a great way to begin every school year. During the month of November, we focus on Actewin, which is the teaching of bravery. Looking at Actewin while honoring Remembrance Day gives us many real-life examples of bravery. For the months of December and January, we focus on Nabwakawin, or wisdom, which reminds students that knowledge can be found in so many ways.
We continue our year by exploring our final grandfather teachings. They are Gwikwadazwin, or honesty, Zagidwin, which means love, Debawin, or truth, and finishing off the year with Debadendizawin, which means humility. Again, this year and from now on, our goal will be to practice these teachings ourselves with the goal of following a good path in life.
However, this goal of the following a good path in life, one we want to share beyond the home of the Hawks. We believe that our community, our local leaders, and even those who make the decisions on a larger scale would benefit these sacred teachings. One job that our intermediate students have this year is to write persuasive letters to members of Parliament to convince them to adopt the grandfather teachings as a code of conduct. This is think of how much nicer our world would be if all leaders follow a good path in life. Think of how much nicer the House of Commons would be.
To make sure that we don't forget, our Bidmadzuin artists have been given the very important job of representing each teaching of other GC priorities in artistic way. Our artists consult with the class whose door is being painted. They also research symbols that represent each grandfather teaching. The result, absolute masterpieces.
Our Bidmadzuin artists are helping to make sure that we are constantly reminded about the importance of living the good life. These students and Madame McKay, their coach, have a strong interest in art. If you visit our school, you will be reminded of the virtues that are important to the Houston Hawks and you will see it in a very graphic way, how we should be walking through life.
This project has been going on for a year and a half. We now have all the grandfather teachings represented, and we have started working on other gifts of leadership. Nagan's Ajik, which is Ojibwe for leadership, Nuichkiwen, which means friendship, and our artists have created a door to honor Métis culture.
Our most recent door is Mushkweden, which means grit or perseverance. This reminds us how we need to keep working toward achieving our goals, even when things get tough.
You'll recall that last year, as part of our project, we decided that we wanted to name the bridge that spans from one side to the other that crosses the Sagging River. And the idea was that this was a symbolic gesture of bringing a community together. The name that we had chosen was Mino Bamadzawan. And it's interesting how these kinds of things play out in the community. It was a reminder to me that you have to know who your stakeholders are, and you have to make sure you consult those stakeholders. As it turned out, there's an organization on Saugeen First Nation called the Language Keepers and Elders Committee. We didn't know that they even existed until they read in the newspaper that we were planning to name the bridge Bamadzawan, and we were saying that that meant a good path or the good path. They let me know that we had translated that incorrectly, and so they asked to meet with me. So we met with the elders and the language keepers, and they were a wonderful group of leaders in the community. Not elected leaders, but leaders. Don't mistake them for anything else. They were wonderful leaders. They had some great feedback for us. They said, look, we're making history here by putting a name on this bridge. We have to make sure that we get it right and do it right the first time. So they said, please make sure that we translate properly. They gave us 4 different options that they felt were good names for our bridge. They said, Mino Bamadzawan, if we make sure that the community and the children know that it means a good life, that's an appropriate name. They gave us another name too, Mino Takamse, which means a good walk across. Ajgan Nan, which means our bridge. And Zgabignigan, which means we are connected. They said it was very important that the children have the final say. And so they came in and they spoke to students in grades 4 to 8. They explained the significance of each of those words and talked about how fitting they would be for a name. And then we had a ballot drawn up and the children voted. And our students have spoken. They decided that our bridge should be named Skabignigan, which again means we are connected, or the more literal translation is from one side to the other, we are connected. You can see the symbolic significance of that name. Certainly, it does actually physically connect one side to the other. But I mean, it speaks to much more in a symbolic way. It's really beautiful when you think of how many things you can associate with that name. We are connected from one side to the other. Zgabignigan.
Zgabignigan reminds us that just like a bridge unites a community in a physical way, our gestures of peace, understanding, and love toward one another bridge our differences and unites us in a very special way, as one family.
At GC Houston, we are proud of the fact that even though we have different cultural backgrounds, every day we come together as one family of Houston Hawks. It is this message of unity that we want to share with our community. Our plan is to do this in a symbolic way.
We have decided to unveil the signs for our bridge on June 21st, which is Aboriginal Day. The signs will have Skabignigan on top, and we are connected underneath. As well, on one side, we will have the Southampton lighthouse logo, and on the other side, the Sagging First Nations symbol. We are working with the Aboriginal Day Planning Committee to determine the timing of the gathering. We will get this information to you when it has been decided. We hope to see you all on the bridge on June 21st.
Thank you for giving us some time today to update your Bemadzwin project. We would like to invite any members of council to visit our school and see firsthand what life is like as a Houston Hawk. Thank you.
Miigwech. Thank you. I don't know if you have any questions for the group.
I'm sure we do. Thanks, Mr. Russell, and thanks for the presentation. That was great. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Russell and students. Once again, the layers of what you are achieving and what you've achieved with this project are just amazing and really a role model in so many ways. So thank you for your work. And is the event at 10 a.m. on the 21st?
We're still working that out with the Aboriginal Day Planning Committee. Right now, we're looking probably at around 1 o'clock.
Okay.
That's. I still have to get in touch with Amanda to work out some of those details, but we're very fortunate that we were invited to be part of that committee. So we were able to weave our gathering into all of the events that are being planned for Aboriginal Day from, I think, 7 o'clock in the morning with breakfast out in the Sagging First Nation community, ending with fireworks. And so I think we have events going on throughout the day, and our gathering is going to be one of those events. So the timing couldn't have been better.
Okay. That's very exciting. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And one of the best decisions I made back in the late 1970s, I think it was. Dan, Mr. Russell now, was hiring you, and the kids loved you back then. And from all reports from around the community, I just keep hearing wonderful things that kids love you today. And just want to thank you for all the great work you do in our community. And you mentioned about Sagging First Nation, town of Sagging Shores having a very positive relationship, and that is so true. And we'll continue, at least from my standpoint, we'll continue to build on that. And but again, thanks for the presentation. Great to see you again.
Great to see you.
Been a lot of years. Thank you for your presentation.
Vice Deputy Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. And we benefited from your attendance at our Heritage meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the Heritage Committee looks forward to being involved on the 21st in whatever way is appropriate. I did want to ask, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk, we need to amend the bylaw related to the naming of the bridge. Will that come at our next meeting?
You, Mr. Mayor, yes, it will.
Okay, thank you. And appreciate the invitation to the school, and I think that anybody who hasn't been in there should walk through the doors and just see all the energy and enthusiasm that goes on in that place. It's amazing. Thank you.
Just to add to that invitation, on June 5th, we are having our Fish Fry and Art Extravaganza. Now, I know it sounds odd, the two together, but it really does work, where you can actually come through. You don't even have to come to the fish fry, but you can walk through the school and you can tour those doors. They truly are masterpieces. Every one of them will have a student who can explain the significance of every symbol on the door and how it's connected to that gift of character or grandfather teaching. So we would love to see council members or community members alike joining us on June 5th in the evening for that, starting at 6 o'clock. Great.
Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Russell, I'd like to congratulate you and the members of your student council tonight. I have seen many of the doors personally, and they're fantastic works of art. The way you are working to bring the community together is fantastic, and I want to say please keep it up and congratulations.
If there's no other comments, well, thank you again, and we look forward to joining on June the 21st.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Rosen. Our next delegation is Wayne Kaufman and Stan Young, and they're here to update us on the 8th Annual Marine Heritage Festival. Welcome. Is that Wayne Kaufman there?
Does this raise and lower the sails? Good evening, and thank you for allowing us this time to present to council and staff and press and everyone else. Your Honor, the Mayor, we as a committee, let me get this thing running first. First day driving with the new machine. Green button? No. There we go. A little like me in the morning. Slow. Again, thanks for giving us this time to present. Your Honor, the Mayor, Council, staff. A big thank you goes out to our partners, our sponsors. Without the people in this room and our partners and sponsors, we wouldn't be able to have a successful festival like we have 7 now. Very successful. Just a few of our partners. Obviously, the municipality of Sagging Shores, Bruce County Museum are a big help with a lot of the behind the scenes. Southampton BIA, Southampton Chamber of Commerce, Bruce Telecom, and Bruce Power. That's just a few, and I know I've missed a number of them, but I could be here all night. So we're here to thank you and to showcase what this year's festival will have in store for everyone. One thing we're very proud of is that it's a family, fun, free weekend. And that was one of the main reasons that I got involved when the word free came in, because there's a lot of things that go on that the people have to spend large amounts of money to have fun. And my idea is you don't have to spend much money to have fun. So we've been working with the staff currently and up till now, getting the paperwork in line to host a successful festival again this year. So let's get into the festival itself. Friday night, and at this time I'd like to stand to pass out personal invitations to each of the council members to our opening ceremonies on Friday night. We have, the museum opens its doors, and did I mention it's free? We have a barbecue, we have boat decorating, we have live music. Bobby Dean Blackburn's back again this year. I don't know if you've heard him, but he's a well-rounded musician with local talent as well. Fun and fellowship, and also this year we'll have an interactive display about the bike race that's on Sunday. So each and every one of you are personally invited from Wayne Sparrow, Jack's rogue brother, to attend our opening ceremonies. That kicks off at 6 o'clock, I believe. Then we move into Saturday. Oh, thanks, Linda. Saturday, through our cardboard boat race and other festival events, we engage families to participate in fun and entertaining activities. I wrote the rules for the cardboard boat race, and rule number 1 is have fun. Rule number 13 is refer to rule number 1. So, but we do have life jackets and all the other safety stuff. But rule number 13 is refer to number 1. So, some of the activities on Saturday, I'm just highlighting them here. Cardboard boat race, big canoe challenge, children's gold hunt, and that's the Wayne Sparrow gold hunt. Jack's lost his gold, and he comes back every year, and I have to return it to him, unfortunately. We have live music in the tent from noon hour on, pretty well. The annual Fireman's Fish Fry, which I think the whole town of Southampton attends, likely some from Port Elgin as well. And there's a beer garden. So here's some photos of some of the events that go on during Saturday, and I would like to personally challenge council to put a team into the Chichimon Big Canoe Challenge. We need 4 people to paddle, and you need a coxswain in the back. And so one team is facing north, and one team is facing south in the same canoe. Is this a pointer? right. Oh, okay. So this is a big canoe challenge here, and there's 4 paddlers facing north, and there's 4 paddlers facing south. And the object of the game is a tug of war. The first team to move the canoe the furthest in either the north or the south direction is the winner. There's usually a lot of water involved and hard work. So we're hoping that event will take off, and we have some plans this year to help make it much better because of we're going to have it going on when the big crowd's at the beach, so that will help immensely. So the cardboard boat races are always a huge success. We had over 30 boats last year, and I think 15 of those were kids under the age of 15. So again, family fun is our focus. So, and the Wayne Sparrow Children's Gold Hunt. Pancake breakfast is always well attended, and I mentioned this. I think world famous Fireman's Fish Fry should be on there, I think. Then we move into Sunday. I missed a slide. We also have live music in the tent, which I mentioned earlier, and the firemen are a huge supporter of the festival as well. So on Sunday, this will be the 3rd Awareness Shore bike race. So in the first 2 years, it more than doubled its participants. We had 50 kids in the children's bike race, and I don't know if you've attended the children's bike race, but it's a hoot. They race around the cenotaph and come back down to the big flag. And if you can picture it, these kids on bicycles with training wheels are coming down the hill at high speeds, and the parents are all lined up trying to catch them. It's fun. It's really a lot of fun to watch. We've had competitors as far away as Australia last year. The first year we had them from Quebec. They were back again last year. So it's certainly something that is growing, and we presume it'll grow even more this year. So raised over $3,000 for the Marine Heritage Festival and the J.C. Houston School. So look forward to that again this year. So just a little bit of a history as to why we do what we do. The Marine Heritage Society is a not-for-profit group of volunteers dedicated to the preservation and enhancement of marine history. The objective of the Society is to identify, preserve, restore material items of marine historical significance and to raise significant funds to support these endeavors. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, let's show you what we've accomplished. The restoration of the lighthouse and the keeper's house started in 1997. The first tour started in 2001. And to date, we have taken 21,695 passengers to the island to tour the lighthouse. The Marine Heritage Festival started in 2010 to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the tour's starting. We continue with, it takes a large number of volunteers in order to do all this. Things that go on, have to go on every week. The keeper's house needs cleaned. We maintain the range lights. The captains, the crew, the tour guides, the gardeners, the cleaners. It's a huge number of volunteers from both communities, all of Sagging Shores. The lion's share of them are members of the Propeller Club, but there is a number that aren't members of the Propeller Club that just simply want to give their time. It's a wonderful organization. They maintain Pioneer Park, and it's a great wedding venue. And a number of these volunteers not only volunteer for the job that they've applied for, but they have to go through strenuous training programs too. Like the captains have to spend 26 hours of training to become a captain for the boat. The crew all have to have first aid training. And Med 3 training for the crew as well, which is a safety training to be a crew member on the boat. So it's not just the people that you see at the front that spend their time. This winter, there's people painting gifts and lawn ornaments for sale in the tour base. They meet once or twice a week, and there's a group of them painting things that people have made, wooden projects. There's a group of gentlemen that meet, I think, just about every morning at the boathouse, and they build things and fix things. They've got the pier list looking like a dining room chandelier. It's so shiny. And they're building a new dock for the island that has been a challenge for us over the last few years because of the winds and waves. We hope to notify you soon of a parade that it may be paraded down the main street of Southampton and commemorate it is quite a looking contraption. It's on 4-foot steel wheels that will roll in and out of the water. So we'll update you on that soon. So, like I said, it's a huge number of volunteers that give up their time to showcase Southampton and Sagging Shores and its marine heritage and its history. So, in closing, all we ask is that the municipality continue with the great support that they've given us. We have one special need that we do require. On Sunday, we cannot move the bleachers that we use for the cardboard boat race at the beach. We can't move them safely by hand. We need large equipment to do that. We would ask that the town would support us in giving us some staff and machinery to help us move those bleachers on Sunday morning. That's really what our ask is this year. So, and that will help with the War on the Shores bike race, that we can have people safely sitting in a location as opposed to wandering the streets. So thank you for your support and look forward to your future support.
Thank you, Wayne and Stan. Questions?
This slide here is questions, and if you take a look at the beach behind you, Mayor Smith, that is a representation as to the number of people that we do have show up at the beach for the cardboard boat races. It's huge. So, any questions?
Questions, comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I just noticed that Dave Wen is sitting back there, and Councillor Minaj made a comment. He goes, "It's the 8th year," and when I saw Dave, I think, Dave, you and I did that very first presentation, and look how far they've come, and you're still on the committee. I also just wanted to point out Dr. Rob Campbell back there. I think Rob at some point is going to write the definitive book on how to build a cardboard boat. He's involved in training at the museum, and the opening night has a cardboard boat building workshop that I think you're totally responsible for. So I just wanted to highlight your skills, because you've certainly put a lot of those boats in the water. And I think the same boat has won a couple years in a row in one category. It's time for a change. What category is that?
We cut it in 2 last year. We won't let it win again.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
I told them if they won, and we wouldn't let them win another year, because I was remiss on my crew behind me here. Great support staff. We were able to sail in. The ice is off the water now, so we got the boat parked out behind the island, and I want to thank them for coming and supporting me. Thanks.
Councilor Dave Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Captain. It's a pleasure to have you guys here, and the few times that I've been down to the Marine Heritage Festival, it is certainly a wonderful time, and like you said, the numbers keep growing. As far as the challenge goes for putting the team in, on behalf of council, I accept your challenge, even if I can't get enough councillors. I think maybe there might be a certain police chief who's I think is a good role.
Staff, managers, there's a lot of people out there.
There you go. We'll have a team, and we'll see what we can do.
Fire departments against the police department.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
We can put a lot of weight in that canoe.
The Southampton Fire Department against the Port Elgin Fire Department. Yeah, you can just go on and on with it. Yeah.
All right. Challenges. So challenge accepted, and thanks very much for the invitation. And I will see you there.
Thank you,
Councilor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick side comment, play off of that. And this is an election year, so maybe we could decide who gets elected by who wins the boat race.
It's a non-political festival, Neil.
Okay, I think if any other questions or comments? Yeah, your request, I would say you direct it here to our CAO, and I'm sure he can get you in contact with the proper person.
We have.
You've probably already been talking.
We've talked to the staff, and they've told us what they would require, and as a numerical value, to have the staff come in on overtime on Sunday in order to safely move that stuff. That's really the request. So, with some type of a front end loader. To be able to pick up the bleachers and move them safely. We just can't do that. So.
Well, I'm sure we'll get a solution.
Okay. I can tell you what the staff.
You don't need that. No,
okay.
I think.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Stan and Wayne.
Thank you.
And we look forward to the 8th annual festival.
So do we. Thank you. Arr. Sails are down.
Okay, our next item on the agenda then is a general government staff report, and has to do with the police service headquarters design approval. And I'm going to give it to our CAO to introduce our president.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As outlined in the report, the Police Services Headquarters project is advancing as planned and is on schedule. Tonight, we require Council's approval of the near to final design so that staff can advance to the tendering process. When that is complete, staff will return for Council's final approval of the project. Tonight, our architect, Grant Demert, will present the preliminary design, or I should say the close to final design.
Thank you, Mayor Smith, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. I brought, you all should have had a handout, design brief that I prepared, and you would have received it by email. And on there are some statistics related to the building. But this evening, I'd just like to talk about the drawings and show you graphically what we've thought about and what the committee and ourselves have worked through. And to tell you that we're getting ready to call for tenders if council is satisfied with what they see. So this first image, of course, is the aerial photograph of the site. And the property is this one, and what you see on the drawing or on the air photo superimposed is our design. It shows the building and the parking lots, and of course we've located the building approximately 6 meters from Mackenzie, which is this road. North is at the top of the page, and the council chambers is in here. So this particular view of the project is from the intersection of the Concession 10 Road and the highway, Goderich Street. And the main feature of this is in the computer. It's accurate to perspective and so on and so forth. The key feature here is this tower, which will have the signage on it subject to signed permits and so on. So vehicles and persons approaching the town will undoubtedly notice this building in that location. It's meant to be seen. We believe this corner will likely have this type of visibility for its entire existence, even as the 10th concession grows in importance with all the new development proposed around it. So this is the site plan in general. And the area to the west, which is the front of the building, and the north are considered the urban streets. or the urban exposures of the project, and we located the building as near as we could to the intersection. And the entrance is at this location, which is below a covered walkway and canopy. There's a sidewalk connecting it to the street. And we tried to follow as many of the precepts of the urban design guidelines associated with highway commercial, as was the mandate for the project. And we proposed and have one tree roughly every 7 meters of frontage on these two streets. And on Wellington at the bottom, just off the page, there's another drawing I'll show you in a second. We have additional trees. And part of the strategy here is to arrange the building with as little pavement as possible, both for economics, but also because we would like to have the right amount of parking and not more than that. So to that end, I'll point out that this territory at the front, at the southwest corner of the developed site, is the public parking. Along the south and through here is the staff parking, and along the east side, separated by gateways with moving arms, is the secure parking, and that's the home of the cruisers and day-to-day workings of the police force. And they'll come in and out of a door over here, which is on the east side of the building and distant from the public access. So we have also drawn just to the right of the image fictitious property line, which permits us to use as little of the site as possible, subject to final approvals and so on and so forth. So you have a good portion of the available land available to the right or east of the building for future development. And so this plan is the site plan and the floor plan together, and Mackenzie's on the left side and the 10th concession on the top of the page. The entrance to the building is on the west, and that's the sidewalk leading to the street. It also doubles as the location where the firefighter's truck will pull up, and the fire hydrant is right there, so that can be kept clear of snow and so on and so forth. Pedestrians can access the building at that point. Public parking is in this location, as discussed. There's barrier-free stalls, and there's a couple of interesting parking stalls which the chief brought forward as an idea, and they are for internet exchanges. And the idea is that as this police building routinely records activity outside of its precinct, outside the building, there are parking stalls, and in this case 2 of them, that are informally dedicated to those who wish to make internet transactions. And the idea is that it becomes a safe place in the community to do so. If there were ever a problem, of course, during one such transaction, the police are quite available to the location. So staff parking at this location, again, they enter at the south, and police parking on the east side. All of this was done with due consideration for future expansion in 2 key areas. The first is this northern piece, which permits expansion for the constables, more police officers if you need them available here. It pretty much doubles the area available to those constables that we've got in the design now. There's a small piece right here, which is adjacent to the officers' day-to-day in and out to the squad cars, and that expands the jail cells by at least 2 cells, if not 3 or 4. And then down at the south edge of the building, there's this block, and that actually expands the locker rooms. So if we increase the number of officers, we can increase the number of lockers available, and that's planned fairly carefully to avoid putting plumbing in a position that makes it difficult to either increase it if that's necessary, and also one hopes that you wouldn't have to because it's shift work and so on. The lockers could be simply added in this component, and as I say on the design brief handout, we can pretty much double the capacity of the locker rooms as well. And then finally, for expansion of parking, it happens in two primary areas. The one at the south, which is the staff parking lot, and a little bit along the east, which is sort of optional, but you can, again, double the staff parking and double up the cruiser parking available. And then one last thing, the highway commercial zone applicable here permits 3 driveways. We're building 2, by and large, for cost reasons, and there's really only need to have 2 ways out of the site in the event of emergency. So one is dedicated on the west side to public and staff, and then on the north side is the preferred access and egress for the squad cars and police vehicles. However, we can add a driveway here, which is on the south side of the parking lot, onto Wellington, and that would be in the event that the town decided to have a separate access for whatever reason at that time. It would meet with the zoning bylaw provisions. So the floor plan, the main effort of our design, apart from the site, of course, is invested in making functional arrangements among the parts and at the same time attempting to develop a plan that can be expanded as described for the site. And so we begin with a square shape, which is evident here. Generally speaking, the building is square, although the corners, each corner is pulled in a different way. And the divide in the project is more or less straight through the center of it, heading east and west, with the parts of the building to the north devoted to police functions, their office, administrative functions, the constables, this happens to be the drug enforcement area, and this one over here on the east side is the sergeant's area. And on the opposite corner and facing the public is the chief's office, followed by the senior officers and a small meeting room. So the public, located near the south and west, has within its sphere the reception area and the boardroom. And members of the public coming to the building would typically not go beyond this door, which is the secure door that separates the 2 primary functions. However, there are times where interaction is definitely required, and they're specifically managed in this plan. And the first would be that, of course, you need to speak to the reception, and that person is stationed here. They can unlock doors, they can allow people in, and so on and so forth. And then a person can be invited into the back area. There's an interview room so that if it's not very clear what the issue is, they can be interviewed briefly and allowed through into the building or back out to the lobby, and then the boardroom here. If I just require fingerprinting from the reception, I can be taken to this room via these corridors to do the fingerprinting. The significance of that is simply that I don't need to walk anywhere near the police functions themselves, which are north of that line. Finally, staff come in the south area here. Their lockers are at that south area. There's a courtyard here that is also used to separate the parts of the building. And then the sally port is in the extreme south and east of the building arrangement. So from the sally port, accused or prisoners can be brought in and brought into the cells. So then the building's materials, there are really only 2 basic kinds of materials on the project. On the front, which is west at the top of the page, are brick surfaces with a bit of contrasting metal surfaces, the windows for the boardroom, and the tower feature I discussed near the beginning of this talk with signage on the top of it. At the south, facing the public area, we see the other material, which is a metal cladding, and the metal siding is selected for economy by and large, but it also is going to be designed in a very clean and minimal way. It'll look very contemporary when it's finished. And this is the passage to the front door. And then on the other 2 sides at the top of the page, that's the eastern side. And the main features are that you have the 2 sally port doors here, There's a door here which can be used as Sallyport storage. That's its intended function. But they can store a vehicle in there as well if they need to, and do a search or an investigation associated with that, and it doesn't interrupt the Sallyport use. And then on that east elevation, the constabulary, the sergeants, and the drug offices all have a clear view of the 10th concession and their parking lot out there through these windows. And finally, on the north side, we have some more brick, chief's office in the front corner here, and the senior officers arranged facing north. This feature here, it represents the parade room, and it's also the use of force training room. So we have basically a building that's composed of 2 or 3 materials at most. It has a flat roof. The structure of the building is made with what's called ICF, or insulated concrete forms. It's got a very high thermal value to it. It also happens to have the virtue of being bulletproof. So we quite deliberately select a height for a windowsill of 42 inches below windows. So all the components of the building thus far, we're trying to do more than one thing with each thing, with each part, with each component. And that's pretty much it for the conversation. If there are any questions, I'd be pleased to address them.
Thank you, Grant. Any questions of Grant? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Grant, for the presentation. It's the second time I've heard it today, and it gets more exciting every time I hear it. I wanted to just note for Council's information that I handed the clerk earlier this evening a copy of a resolution from the Police Services Board approving this design on behalf of the Services Board. I think the board... I know the board is of the view that this facility, designed as it is, will serve the intent that we have been looking for since we, many years ago, started talking about this, and in the last couple of years started talking about it more intently, and that is to allow the service to provide adequate and effective policing in terms of the facility that it has. So we do believe it meets that need. Also, we believe it meets the requirement that this not be a building for just a couple of years, but that it be a more permanent solution to the problems that we have in terms of space serving the police service. So I can, on behalf of the board, recommend this design to you, Council. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things about the design that I think are pretty good. Mr. Diemert pointed out one of them, but I think it's worth highlighting in more detail, and that is that concept of the internet parking spaces, which I think is a really innovative concept. And it's not just, Grant talked about internet transactions, that you might be making out there, but it's really transactions of any kind. I know the chief earlier today was talking about, in case of situations where there might be difficult custody situations between parents of children. They're frequently exchanging their children in public places. This is a place, if people feel at risk, where they could make those exchanges in a place that's close to the police station and under surveillance. And really any exchange that you need to make in public, or any meeting, frankly, that you need to make in public where you feel unsafe or where you feel at risk, you can come to the police station and make it there. It's under surveillance, and the police are right close at hand to help you out if you're feeling at risk. So I think that's a really great feature and an idea of our new police chief, Chief Belay. So a great concept. The other thing that I was pondering since I heard the presentation the first time over the course of the evening was the sign on the top of the building up on the tower, and I think that that's a great concept because it's a police station and people might be looking for it, and to be able to have something high and clear and lit to identify it is a great idea. I think how we light it is important, and I think we have to focus on complying with the sign bylaw there. I'm not sure what the requirements are in that location, but we do need to do that. But I was thinking about there's some issues inside the service with the logo. I mean, we don't really have a consistent logo for the police service that, you'll note police officers have one logo on their badges, and there's a different one on the sign of the building. There's different logos. And I was just wanted to float the concept of maybe staying away from the logo altogether and focusing more on a universal symbol for police, something that is clear, would be clear to everybody, anybody from anywhere driving by, that this is a police station. Sometimes logos can be, particularly our logos, can be a bit confusing because, there's a lighthouse and a boat and other stuff. It doesn't look like if you knew it was a police station, you'd know it was a police station. But we don't have the sign up for people who know that. We have it up for people who don't. So that's an idea that I think you might want to consider. And the other thing I know this is a next to final design, and I'm obviously going to support it. But I think we want to look carefully again at some of the design elements in the final design to make sure they match as closely to our branding toolkits and district design guidelines as possible, so that those elements are drawn into the building. We have an opportunity here building a civic building, one that I hope will stand for decades to come, to set an example to other people building things in the community as to how we want the community to develop, what kind of community we're going to be for the next 40 or 50 years. And so I would like to see us draw those design elements into this. Just the one thing that jumped out to me was the street lights around the building don't really match any of the street light designs we have anywhere else. It doesn't match the style of our downtown street lights or any of our other ones. So I mean, those are some features that are I think probably minor in terms of getting this design approved and rolling, which we need to do tonight. But hopefully yourself, the chief, the CAO, and the rest of the staff team can consider going forward, because I think it's worth considering. But finally, I just want to thank you. I thank the CAO and the chief and you, Grant. Grant's done like 1 million designs of this building over the past decade, and he's worked hard on them all. And I think this process has been quite good getting to this point, and that's thanks to the CAO and to your whole team. And so I appreciate that very much, and thank you for your work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I have a couple questions. With our old building, one of the main issues was storage. I'm looking at section 53 and 54. Do we have enough storage? I don't want to have to be building this building and then find out that we don't have enough storage. So we have current year records, then archived high density shelving. Do we have enough space for storage?
Okay, as you've pointed out, if I may answer, the current year storage is in this location. The archive storage is in this location. Currently, that archive storage is roughly 2 times bigger than what they have now.
Is that big enough? We're told it's not big enough right now.
It is probably not, because the room is filled with other things too. So once those files, and I believe the chief has a deaccession policy in play, forthcoming. Maybe he should address some of that.
Sure, come on up, Chief.
And while he's coming up here, I'll point out that the property storage vault is here, and it's also more than twice the size of what currently is used as property vault.
You're absolutely right. That was one of the issues that we do have is storage. Right now we have things stored up in the attic and everything else. So one of the things that I have done since I've been there in a short time is we do have a retention bylaw now within the police service. So we're purging a lot of files. We've got some files that are been there a long time that we don't really need anymore. So we are purging those. The type of shelving that we're going to be putting in there with both in current year and then into the actual archive area, that is more than adequate space. So I don't foresee any problem in the future with it. I think the way that we've designed this is going to work very well.
Okay. My second question is the atrium that we have. Is it open to the outside? Can you come from the side of the building, go in, or is it only accessible from the inside by the kitchen?
Are you referring to this?
Yes.
It's an outdoor courtyard.
So, can you tell me what the surface will be? Is it grass? Is it interlocking brick?
Right now it's got grass and some hard surface concrete in it. and its intent is to provide the staff with a break area on the property that's also secure for them. And it also acts as a relief for these people here.
So it's open, but can you get, when I walk along the sidewalk, can I just walk into it, or is it only accessible from inside the building?
Okay, so at this point right here along the walk is a trellis that's really a fence upon which we're growing some planting, and that's going to serve as a barrier. So the general public won't tend to go there.
Okay, so what about snow removal and water retention in the spring and fall?
Right, we shouldn't have any trouble with that. So what's happening here, which you can't see in the drawings, but the property right now, as you well know, is low. It tends to pond water in one particular area. Mm-hmm. We're building up this land approximately 1 meter and change, 1.3 meters or so, all of it with draining material. So what'll be under this courtyard is a lot of gravel to drain that space. So the idea of the courtyard is to provide an ongoing and a relief space, both for the staff and for anyone who happens to be using this area right here.
Okay. It looks like a lot of space, and knowing the way that snow does come down, straight down, and I just worry about the amount of accumulation that we'll have in there. So, just a thought. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Minaj, and then...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a side thought, I guess, not necessarily related to the building, and I'm happy to bring it to conclusion as has already been mentioned. I note today, though, I'm reasonably sure that most of the cruiser emergency access onto Highway 21 takes place right at the stoplight as they leave from Tomlinson at the stoplight. So now we're going to change the dynamics of that. We're going to access Highway 21 at an open stop sign with literally six lanes or more at that point. Is there consideration, do you need a controlled access? I guess I hadn't thought about it till now. Is there a requirement for a controlled access for cruisers and officers to override lights or have a light to make a good, clean access onto a highway?
With different fire trucks, I'm not sure if they actually have it here, but there's an Opticom. It's like a white flashing light, and it's affixed to there's a receiver affixed to every stoplight. I'm not sure if they have it here or not. No, we don't have it here. But I know in other municipalities, that's what they have it. It flips the lights it changes the lights from red to green. The thing with, so for fire trucks, they're very large vehicles. They take a long time to stop. They take a long time to get going. It depends when our officers leave the office to go to an emergency call. If they're going to Southampton, they usually scoot out Mackenzie and then out to Highway 10 or out to Concession 10 and then straight out. Yeah. Sometimes it depends where they're going, and they go out the back way. And sometimes they'll go right to Highway 21. Now, with police vehicles, if it's an emergency, we can get up to the stop sign, put our light siren on, everybody stops, and we're safe to go through. So we've never really had an issue, so it seems to work pretty well. You're welcome.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Grant, once again, this is our second time around through this presentation. We had it earlier today, and that gave us opportunity to pause and come up with some more ideas. But once again, along the theme of improvements over the previous building, one of the problems with the previous building was the HVAC systems. And could you just describe how we're going to heat this thing and cool it, and where the mechanical rooms are, or room is?
I can. So this diagram, which is a roof plan, shows multiple rooftop units. They are conventional gas-fired units. They have electric air conditioning. So this is not on a heat pump like this facility is. We don't have that provision in our budget. And on the roof, these units permit zoning of the project according to sun exposure, whether they're interior rooms or exterior rooms and so on. And then we do have, inside our floor plan, in these locations, here is a water room, here is a mechanical room, and here is the electrical room. And we've designed those services to come into the project around the future expansion. So you shouldn't have to dig up the gas line or the electrical line, etc. However, those rooms also contain, in particular, the mechanical room here. It contains boilers as well. So we have some in-floor heating in the sally port, in the vestibule for drying of foot traffic moisture, and in particular in this area, which is the day-to-day eastern access and egress for the officers. So we have high-efficiency boilers, we have high-efficiency rooftop units with energy recovery in what's called an energy recovery ventilator on the roof as well. So all of exhaust air is recycled and transferred and so on. And then inside the building we have a very high level of air tightness and insulation all around the outside and on the roof.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have three questions. The current square footage of our building today would be 5,000 square feet. Am I correct with that?
I believe it's about 6.
6, and we're going to 14.7, correct? Right. So I'm just with the has Grant Deemert or staffing or anyone taken a look at the current 6,000 square foot? I know we're just looking at building drawings tonight and wanting to go to tender approvals, but have we looked at all in the operational cost side for 6,000 square feet as compared to 14,700 square feet? Grant, were you asked to do any of that in terms of what the yearly operational costs will be for this building versus what we have now?
No, I wasn't asked that.
Dale, any comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. We don't have final costs on that, but staff have started to meet on that. The Director of Community Services, myself, and the Police Chief met 2 weeks ago to start to put numbers together.
That's fair. And I'm just wondering, maybe this is a question for the Chief. How many current cells do we have in our building, and what again are the number of cells we're moving to?
We have 4 currently, and we're moving to the same number in the new building. And with the, if we require more in the future, we could add an additional 4 if need be.
So I thought there was 4 and 4, but I just want to clarify it. So the reasoning for staying with the 4 versus going to 6, 8 right with the original plan is, I mean, it would be, obviously more expensive to do it at a later date. What was the reasoning behind staying with 4 cells with the new building?
Well, we actually look back at just how many times we actually have 4 people in the cells. It's very, very rare. You'll see within there, too, there is a secure interview room. I don't know if you, right there as well. So that secure interview room, that'll be monitored 24/7 as well. So that could be used also as a holding area if we need be. So without having the bars in the front, we could also use that as a cell as well if we needed. But I think now adequate is 4, because really, when we hold people for a bail hearing or anything like that, if they're in custody before they go to court, they're there for a short time, then we transfer them over to Walkerton.
So you're 100% confident that that's the right number?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you, Grant, and thank you, Chief. Then I'll read the recommendation is that the Council approve the presented design of the proposed police services headquarters as a close to final design. Any further questions? All in favor? Vote, that's carried. So now our next item on the agenda is a staff report that has to do with electronic meetings, and our clerk, Linda White, will present.
Thank you. So Council had previously given direction to staff to review the feasibility of allowing electronic participation for members who are not able to attend meetings in person. So staff have undertaken a review of the existing electronic equipment installed in the Council chambers and considered the implementation of electronic participation for all types of meetings. So based on those findings, staff are of the opinion that electronic participation can be accommodated for meetings held by committees of Council. I want to clarify that committees of council, that would be with the exception of the committee of whole meetings and the planning meetings. The existing electronic equipment in this room is not readily available and does not have the ability to allow the audio from the outside source, such as a telephone or a Skype call, to be directly connected to the microphone system in the chambers. Therefore, the audio from the member participating electronically would not be heard by the public viewing the webcast or cable TV. These technical challenges can probably be overcome. However, staff recommend that electronic participation be offered and tested at the committee level prior to considering implementation for meetings of council. If council wishes to allow electronic participation at committee meetings, there are a number of factors presented in a chart attached to this report for council's consideration. And just to be clear, if council agrees to the information provided in the chart, it will be incorporated into a procedure bylaw amendment or a procedure for electronic participation. And I just want to draw your attention to that. One of the main factors that needs to be considered is whether a member who participates electronically should be provided the voting rights or simply participation status without the ability to vote. So if council accepts the recommendation as presented, committee members participating electronically will be given the right to vote. Leave it for your consideration.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that the procedural bylaw be amended to include provisions for the use of electronic participation at committee meetings. Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate this report, Linda, and I think it has a lot of merit. I believe that due to circumstances and the advancement of technology, that it's about time, and municipal laws of the province allow for it, then we should take advantage of it. I wonder if there's a flavor or if there's a willingness to consider a part of the bylaw to limit the number of consecutive meetings that a member might be allowed to participate in fully, especially if voting rights are involved. I mean, I would not feel comfortable in a situation where a person, for instance, a snowbird who is going to Florida from November to April was going to be able to participate in 6, 8, 10 council meetings consecutively from a foreign locale. Because I think one of the important things about making decisions on council is not just reading the agenda and the attachments and making the decision, but actually being in the community and going out and looking at projects and looking at sites and getting a feel and talking to people in the area. And so I wonder if there's a flavor for limiting the number of consecutive meetings that a person could do that.
It's suggested, or I mean, in the comments here, David, suggested that 3 times per calendar year. I mean, is that acceptable? 3? Yep, sure. No, that's all right. It's a long report. Sure. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I support the overall intent of the recommendation. I just wonder if it seems to me that the intent here is to allow participation through electronic means in circumstances other than those circumstances where the meeting is being webcast or televised. And I just wonder if we should say that rather than say committee meetings. If the direction should be that if we're not webcasting or televising the thing, you can participate electronically rather than this wording around committees, because of the confusion around which committees are televised and which ones aren't, right? I mean, it's open to a bit of confusion, I think, and that if that's the purpose, if the concern is that we don't have the ability to accommodate electronic participation because when you're on television or webcast, then that's what we should say. But otherwise, I think the report is good, and I would support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, then we'll go down.
Just for clarification, as a follow-up to the Deputy Mayor's comment, my understanding would be that what we're approving would exclude participation on a committee of adjustment meeting, a planning advisory committee meeting, committee of the whole council meeting and a regular council meeting. Are those the four that would not fit into this, Linda?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is correct. The question arises with respect to the Committee of Adjustment. It currently is not televised or webcast. It does become difficult when there's information on the screen and the participant cannot see it at home. If there's any new addition, it was my intent when writing this that Committee of Adjustment would be an exception. It would not be allowed.
Councilman Minot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the first thought is that, for me anyway, is timing. So I understand that staff have to go back, massage a bylaw, bring it back, and we're going to I'm going to read through this and we're going to attempt to do this during this term of council 2018. However, I believe we are, and I'll stand corrected if not. When do we believe that we could move further? If it works really well, and we can move ahead in the electronic world, I for one, am not really comfortable with the notion that I think we should be able to electronically solve those problems very quickly, albeit it might cost some money. I get that. I've been with companies where we have boardroom meetings between two companies, and we should be able to, I believe we should be able to see the other person. I don't think we should do this without seeing the other person, seeing and hearing the other person. And that person should be in a secure facility. If they're remote, no matter where they are in the world, they should be able to locate a facility where they can connect to us and they can see us. There should be a camera here that they can see us, we can see them. It's like they're sitting right beside us. That's all available today. I've worked with it in Ontario in the last year, and I think that we should be finding out what those costs are, and I think that we would quickly be able to include all meetings without a doubt if we set it up that way. We could have a secondary, this screen here could have me on it. You'd like to see me up there all the time. If I was in Florida for a month at a meeting, I could see you and you could see me, and I could participate, and I could show my hand in a vote. It can be done that way, and jurisdictions are doing it. Businesses are doing it that way. So I would hope that we can quickly find out what that is and bring it back as a revision, or maybe look towards doing a sample of it at a council meeting before the end of this term of council. Thank you.
Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too support this recommendation. I think we have a significant percentage of our taxpayers who are seasonal residents or go away in the wintertime, and I think anything we can do to make their participation in this part of our governance system will have a lot of benefits for our municipality. A couple of questions that I didn't send to Linda. I know one of the questions was about motion sheets being signed. If we decided to include the Committee of Adjustment, because it's not being webcast, then we'd have to, I know you have a question in there, how do we deal with that? We'd have to decide if we're just going to say if you're participating electronically, you can't be involved in a motion, I guess. Because I looked up the current procedure, and it says that there has to be a motion submitted in writing under the signature of the mover and the seconder. In other committees, it wouldn't be an issue because motions, in my experience, are just spoken to and recorded by whoever's taking the minutes. The other thing I just thought of that kind of relates to decorum of the person who's participating electronically, I think we should have something in there about background noise, especially if you're in some kind of tropical locale and you've got exotic birds in the background or something. It would be distracting. So official meeting room might be a little onerous, to try to require that of the person, but I think at least asking the person to be in a respectfully quiet location if they're going to participate. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Mr. Mayor, one thing I forgot to comment to when the clerk asked about it, and I wanted to make a comment, which is voting and whether members should be able to vote, and I think they should. I think that it only makes sense if they're in the going to be involved in the meeting, and we can connect clearly that they should be able to participate in that way as well. So I would certainly entertain and be happy to see in the bylaw the right to vote for people participating electronically.
Okay, so lots of good comments here. I think it's a good start. I suspect that this will evolve as we move forward. And so the recommendation is, if you heard it, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the recommendation? Well, that's carried. So the next item then is a Community Service Parks and Recreation Staff Report. That's to do with the Southampton Art Center, and our Director, Jane, will present.
Thank you. This certainly is a good news story as the Southampton Art Center is back to a 5-year agreement with the municipality. You will recall that over the last number of years, they've requested a reduction in their fee as well as the duration of their agreements. They've gone through some challenges, and it's encouraging to see that they are back on par with the previous agreements. And this evening, we present to you a 5-year lease agreement. I've also included the financial impact in the report.
Thank you, Jane. Then the recommendation is that Council pass a bylaw to authorize the lease agreement between the Town of Sagging Shores and the Southampton Art Center for office and exhibit display space at the Southampton Town Hall for 5 years. Questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. So then the next item on the agenda is the Winterhawks Agreement. And again, Jane's going to present.
Yeah, their existing agreement is about to expire. The Lakeshore Winterhawks Senior A Hockey Club. This 3-year agreement includes practice nights, game nights, a licensed bar, and the dressing room, which is known as their club room. And again, I've included the financial impact in the report.
Thank you, Jane. And as council, recommendation is that Council pass a bylaw to authorize the lease agreement between the Town of Sagging Shores and the Lakeshore Winterhawks Senior A Hockey Club for a 3-year term. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. So the next item on the agenda then is communications petitions for committee of the whole action. There's one there from MPP Mr. Hardiman respecting municipal authority over landfill sites. And I'll look for some direction. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd move support. I think it's important for communities to have some say over the location of landfill sites in their communities.
Okay, and we have it seconded by Councillor Minaj. Any further discussion on it? All in favor? That's carried. There are 6 items there for committee's information. No questions. Then we have some reports of department heads, and the next one is an information report. It's there. If there's any questions, we'll deal with them with the volunteer fair on May the 2nd, 2018. Questions? The next one then is information on the 2017 Port Algon Waste Water Plant MOECC inspection. Questions? Then we'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Madison and Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, all in favor? We're adjourned.